Leading off our discussion tonight is Joel Leppard. He is an attorney representing two women who testified to the House Ethics Committee about Matt Gaetz. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
So, why are you here? Why are you discussing this publicly?
I'm here strictly on behalf of my clients. They have provided so much testimony, both to the DOJ back in 2020. They provided testimony before the grand jury, also in 2020.
And that, to be clear, is the sex trafficking investigation.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yep.
They testified to the House this year about that DOJ investigation. They have provided hours of testimony and hundreds of documents to the House. And I'm here so that they do not have to provide additional testimony to the Senate.
So you believe it's in your client's interest, and your clients don't want to testify to the Senate.
That's right. Their interests, I'm sorry, their interests are to remain private, to go back about their lives as young 20-something individuals. They really don't have a dog in this fight. And
so releasing the Ethics Committee report, for example, to the Senate could save your clients from having to testify.
Their worst case scenario would be to be forced to testify on the floor of the Senate on national television and to have their identities made known to the public. They've already been facing intense scrutiny, and only the media knows their names. They've had individuals jump out of the bushes. They've been stalked. They've been harassed, and frankly, they're concerned about their personal well-being if their identity became public.
Well, here is that worst case scenario, and I don't think this is what John Cornyn, I don't think Texas Senator John Cornyn realizes what you've just said when he said this. He said this the other day about your clients testifying to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Let's listen to this.
Well, the truth is the information is going to come out one way or the other. So I guess the more I've thought about it, it's not critical that they release the report because we know roughly who the witnesses are, and I assume they'll be called before the Judiciary Committee.
So he's a senior and experienced Republican senator on the Judiciary Committee, and he was at first insisting you have to give us the House ethics report. And now he's saying, well, it's not so important because we can just call these witnesses. He thinks we can just call your clients.
You know, to say that we can just call the clients again is incredibly wrong-headed. The House has been investigating a very thorough and very professional investigation over the last 6 months. Presumably, their investigation would be hundreds of pages long. There's no way that a Senate should or could conduct such a thorough investigation that's already been conducted on the same topic. It would be pointless and frankly fruitless for the Senate to conduct another investigation.
So there's a report of that some of the Ethics Committee's information has been hacked. A hacker has gotten in there and gotten some of the evidence and exhibits possibly involving your clients. None of that has leaked yet, but it seems extremely likely that this report will become available to the Senate. And when the Senate gets that report, when John Cornyn reads that report, assuming he does, assuming it gets there, what is the story that he will learn from your two clients in that report?
You know, the story is basically two individuals who were asked to call and testify before the House, truthfully, and that's what they did. But as to how the House kind of examined or questioned my witness, essentially they took the criteria of their examination of what they were called to answer the question. You know, did Representative Gaetz engage in improper sexual actions? Did he engage in illegal drug use, possession, consumption, and purchase? And my clients did answer questions about that.
And was the answer yes, that he did engage in illegal drug use?
Yes, so there were a lot of questions about the illegal drug use. My clients testified that at each one of the events that they went to with Representative Gaetz, that ecstasy was present, that marijuana, which for him presumably would be illegal because he was purchasing it from not a medical dispensary. Right. They were also questioned, and they answered honestly, did you recall a specific incident 6 or 7 years ago wherein you remember Representative Gaetz putting a Molly pill in his mouth, and they said they did not recall that. However, the House did follow up and say, are you familiar with the signs of someone who's on X? And they said yes. You know, he's up all night having sex. He's really excitable. The same kind of symptoms that everyone else is kind of exhibiting. So they believe that he did appear to be on drugs.
And your clients, these two women, were testifying under oath.
Yeah, that's right. They also provided text messages to the House where he was requesting party favors. He described a party favor mecca. He described party favors in 3 different text messages where he was essentially requesting that the party favors be present at the events.
What's a party favor? What's he talking about?
Well, as a criminal defense lawyer, when someone's requesting that drugs be present or if they're purchasing drugs, they're not going to say, please give me some drugs or I'd like 5 grams of heroin. So those are code words, essentially.
And you represented just 2 witnesses to this committee. And is it your understanding that there were more witnesses? And how many more possibly young women witnesses were there?
Yeah, so the House issued a statement that there were over a dozen witnesses. So my clients were just 2 out of the over a dozen witnesses. So my clients are just a small piece of the larger puzzle of what would come out in the House report, hopefully tomorrow.
And to be clear, you do not represent the 17-year-old girl who is described in this testimony.
That's correct. Both of my clients were above the age of 18 for all the relevant purposes.
But they are friends with and were friends with that girl who was 17 at the time.
That's right. My first client who testified that she saw the underage individual having sex, they were actually friends at the time and had been friends for several years.
What is the setting in which she sees the other girl, the 17-year-old girl, having sex with Matt Gaetz?
Right. So she testified to Congress that she was invited to a party at Christopher Dolwer's house. He was a representative in Florida. And she was invited to that party by Joel Greenberg, vis-a-vis her friend, who had met Joel Greenberg on Seeking Arrangements.
Joel Greenberg, who's now in prison.
That's correct, yeah. And when she arrived, she testified that she had sex with Representative Gaetz within minutes of arriving.
Within minutes of arriving?
Minutes of arriving, yes. She was introduced to him. Representative Gaetz took her upstairs into a room, and they had sex in one of the bedrooms upstairs.
And was that a prearranged pay for sex encounter?
So that situation was a situation that Joel Greenberg would have arranged ahead of time. There was no payment from Representative Gaetz at that particular time. My clients testified that the payments came later on at separate events. And
after that, in that setting, is that when your client sees the 17-year-old girl?
So it was at that same event back in July of 2017. At another time later on in the party, she was walking outside towards the pool area. She looked to her right, and she saw her friend, who was 17 at the time, having sex with Representative Gaetz.
Roughly how long is that after he's had sex with the first girl?
I don't recall the exact time frame, but it wasn't immediately after.
Yeah,
it would have been,
okay.
You know.
But it's the same event.
Exactly.
It's the same event. And your client knew that that girl is 17.
That's right. She was aware that her friend was under 17 as they went to high school together.
They went to high school together. And that 17-year-old was still in high school.
That's right.
And somewhere in the evidence to the Ethics Committee, someone seemed to suggest, possibly one of your clients, that when Congressman Gaetz found out that she was 17, he then stopped having sex with her.
Actually, my client did testify to that fact to the House. She said that her understanding was that Representative Gaetz was not aware that her friend was 18. I'm sorry, that was under the age of 18. But then Representative Gaetz found out that they ceased all sexual relationship and didn't continue that until after she was 18.
There was some interstate travel described in this testimony, and I just want to show an appearance of Congressman Gaetz November 9th, 2018, when he is on Fox. Let's just take a look at this, because while he's doing this appearance, according to the testimony, apparently 2 of these girls are in New York with him. Let's look at this.
I think that Elizabeth Warren is to the 2020 election what Chris Christie was to the 2016 election. I think had she campaigned earlier, she would have been able to coalesce that key constituency within the Democratic Party that leans farthest to the left.
So that's the 12 noon show on Fox. What happened after that?
So was that in November of 2019?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I don't. My clients testified that they went to New York in January of 2019. So I'm not sure I'm not sure that's the right clip.
Okay.
I just saw that on there, but they did testify that they observed. I'm sorry, that they traveled up to New York. They received a tour of the facility with Representative Gaetz.
At Fox.
At Fox.
They went to Fox while he was doing a Fox
That's right.
appearance, like that sort of thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And they. They received a tour and they waited in essentially a green room, and afterwards they went out to a show later on.
Did he introduce them to people working at Fox?
That actually was a question that the House had, and they didn't recall being introduced to anyone of note.
And so in that interstate travel, it did not involve anyone under the age of 17.
That's correct. Everyone was above the age of majority at that time.
Was there anything that you're aware of in the federal sex trafficking laws, given that this did involve at certain points, or many points, sex that Matt Gaetz was paying for? Was there any exposure in that kind of interstate travel to New York that might have interested the prosecutors on a sex trafficking case?
Well, I can't speak to what was in the federal prosecutors' minds at the time. There's some disagreement among lawyers about what really constitutes
yes.
Under the Mann Act. But I imagine the prosecutors were interested in it. But I think they were primarily concerned with the underage, which is the underage situation. Because when you have Venmo transactions, that meets the standard for the interstate travel because of the Venmo and electronic wires for the underage.